class today, we went through the two-column layout using float to create that second column. And I thought I'd create a quick video here to demonstrate how to do that, so you'd have access to each of those steps as we went through. The main demo page that we had was this one right here. This is where we did the work with floating images. And I did this somewhat more complicated demo by the time we were done. The simpler demo that we did was this, that just laid out in colors the different pieces. So I'm going to walk through another one out of, and if I go back, out of this video demo page. So that's where you'll find that link, and I'll include the link to the Replit in the assignment here as well. Not the assignment, in the materials. Okay, so if I'm looking at the float layout demo, I need to put in the main pieces of a page. I'll do that real quickly here. Float layout view. No, I will write a sheet with a link to, I think I'm calling this float layout demo.css. I see I spelled it wrong there when I actually created the file. So I'll do that right now. Rename float layout, float layout. There we go. And I'll test that for each bar. We've got the body. And we'll have some header space. Float layout demo video. And we're going to want a nav, and it's going to have some links. Let's do one to Google. I suppose we got to finish that one. We'll do one back to the index page for this. Dancing alien. And we'll go ahead and throw one to Riverdale School, just for fun. We need at least a few to make this look good. Close off the nav, or our main, where all of our content is going to be. So that could be articles, whatever it needs to be. So this will also get to one thing that we didn't get to talk about today, which is how to make these inline elements act a bit like block elements, because we want them to go straight down. So here in float layout demo .css, I want to first make sure that things are working. So I'm going to give the header a background color of navy, and that should be enough to get things going. Like I said, I've created this link here to that one, so I'll go to video demo, and I don't have a background color on that. So what did I do wrong? Float layout demo.html, float layout demo.css. Ooh, that is completely spelled wrong. Rename. What happened to my fingers during that? Let's try that. Reload, and now it's navy, so I know it's working right. Okay. And that probably means that I can afford to get rid of that, because I'm really going to try to stick with the basics here. But we do need some content, so I'm going to put in some content here, and I'm going to make sure that everything, to lay it out properly, I'm going to give this, just to show where things are. My nav will have a border of 1 pixel solid red, and my main will have a border of 1 pixel solid green. I reload this, and that's what I've got. Exactly as we'd expect. They are just going to be one on top of the other, which is standard, and my links go side to side. So two things need to happen in order to make this into a two-column layout. One, this nav needs to be floated left, and it needs to have a different width, because it's a block element, so even if I float it left, it still is going to try to take up all the space. So I want control over width and float are the things we need to do. I'm going to float left, width of 150 pixels. So we look at that, and pretty quickly we see that it's starting to do what we want. We do want those anchors, those A tags, to start acting like block elements. We want them to be one per line. So this is the addition that we're going to add. We're going to use display block, and that's going to make it act like a block element. That stuff in green surrounded by the slash star star slash, that's a comment, which means that it doesn't actually affect anything, it doesn't create any errors. It's there, in this case, for me to communicate with you, if you look at the code, at what that does. And in normal work, it's designed to help you communicate what you're trying to do when the code itself doesn't make it obvious. It also can be really useful to use comments to help you get from, to organize your thoughts and then put your code in where they go. So let's see what that display block did for us. It looked like this before, and now, oh, but of course those don't go on the nav. Those go on A tags. And so we're starting to see a little bit of, there we go. So we've got Google, Dancing Alien, and Riverdale. And if we look at the HTML, we've got Google, Dancing Alien, and Riverdale. So that's a little better. I also, if I want to be more specific, I only want to style A elements that are inside the nav. This is a little bit of a difference that we haven't talked about. I can say nav space A. So when we do multiple things, we read them backwards. So I want A tags that are in the nav, anywhere in the nav. So this space means even if it's like a great-great-grandchild kind of a thing, within elements that are within elements that are within the nav. Anywhere in a nav, an A is going to be display block. Okay, so that gets them going straight up and down. And then I've got my content on the side here. And that's the basics. Now, in order to make it look a little bit better, the other thing that I really want to do is create the width, set the width to a little wider, or not the width, the margin to a little more than the width of the nav. Okay, so I'm going to say margin left. This is 150 pixels, so I'm going to say 155 pixels. Now right now, all that's going to do is shift that over a little bit. To demonstrate what it does, I'm going to add a minimum height on my main of 700 pixels. And I reload that. And now it becomes really clear what's going on here. Okay? It doesn't get ragged there. If I don't have that margin, I'll just cut that out for a second and I reload. It actually is over this. This is really sitting above the main content. And if I add a bunch of text, like let's just borrow all of this text right here. If I add a bunch of context, I need even more, or I can just shrink this up. We'll see that we get this ragged edge, and this kind of gets lost in there. It looks more like a block quote than it is like an actual navigation element. So when I put the, let's get to the right spot here. When I put this, I lost, that's what I get for copying twice, the margin left of 155 pixels back in. Again, that's based on a little bit more than the width of the nav that I'm coming up beside. Now I've got that nice clean line, and this just stays where it's supposed to be. So that takes care of our basic navigation. We can do a bunch of stuff to pretty it up, and you'll see a lot of that in the style CSS, which styled up this one. I've styled up the header in a variety of ways. This is used to make text readable on image backgrounds. And we'll talk about background images next time and all of that. But that's the basics of that. Border radiuses, gradient, you know, there's a lot of stuff going into making this look like it does. If I go back to my Dancing Alien page, you know, so I've got the text shadow there, I've got the background image there, I've got hover effects there. These are all things that we will go over as we go forward. A lot of this is stuff you know how to do. In particular, having a background on the body, a background color on the body, and then styling the articles to have a different background color. makes them stand out a little differently from the rest of things and makes it clear where they begin and end, and really separates them out nicely. So it becomes pretty easy to navigate that way. But going back to our basic demo, the key pieces are, we've got a header, a nav, and main content. And you can do whatever you want in the main content. It'll work just the same. And then the header, we just style up however we want it to look good. The nav, we float it left and give it a width. And then with the main, we want to set that margin left to a little more than the width of that nav. And that'll take care of your two-column layout. Let's go ahead and see what happens if we drop in a div here and content for the right column. I did not want it to do that. Column. And this will do a third column layout if you want to add that ability in. I'm going to do this after the div, or after the nav, and after the nav a. Div, I'm going to float this right and give that a width of 150 pixels, and I'm going to give it a background color of, let's say, blue for now, and a minimum height of 400 pixels so that it takes up some space. And then with this main, I can add a margin right of 155 pixels as well. Helps if I spell the word right. And then I go here and I go to that video demo. And we see now we've got a 3-column layout if you want one. You don't see those, I think, very often anymore, but they're there. So take a look at this Replit page right here. And you see there's a bunch of function involved, but you can see some of the pieces that we're talking about right now. We've got a column on the left. We've got what could be main and a couple of articles, and then we've got a couple things going on here. Obviously there's more complexity, but this is essentially the kind of layout we're talking about. So just an example for you in the real world. Thanks, everybody.